When you do cry out why, that's okay.
Yeah.
Do it. You're allowed that time to hurt and feel. And I think it's important to do that. The thing is, are you going to get up again?
Sure.
Are you going to try again? Are you going to reach out for help when you need it? Are you going to be brave enough to say this hurts and I'm not doing okay? And I need somebody else to come in and help. Like, those things take courage. And when you do that and when you get over that hump, that's where the beauty starts. But you have to be able to keep getting up.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast. This is conversation number 57. I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm so excited to present you this amazing conversation. I have an amazing individual here today. Her name is Taya Kyle. She is the author of American Wife, the author of American Spirit, and she's the founder of the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation. She's an incredible human being, and she aligns with so much of what I'm trying to do with this podcast, and that's trying to help other people, but also highlight other people's amazing stories. It's actually the topic of her new book, American Spirit. So I was very humbled to have her on here and very grateful for the opportunity to speak with her for the time that I did. Know that you can go to my website to check out all the other podcasts, www.kristoflewis.com/podcast. You can see all the other amazing guests that I've had on there. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your service. And it's going to be fun to see how we're aligned. It's cool.
Thank you so much. It means a lot coming from you and your background and everything that you've endured and the communities that you support and that you have lived and that you continue to live in. It's so humbling. And like I was telling you a little bit before we started recording, 9 years Navy vet. About half my time there, I was in Naval Special Warfare here on the East Coast as an electronics technician. So I got to work next to giants, and it was very, very humbling again. So speaking to you is really, like I said, humbling many times, but it's very important to me. And it has a special place in my heart. You know, we all experience things in that community. It's a very, very tough community to be the member that's serving, to be any family members, and any way that you're involved is very tough. And it's very tough differently for all of us. So thank you so much. And I wanted to say thanks again for sending me your newest book, American Spirit. That is just so cool getting that from you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm glad you like it. And like you said, you've had an interesting run with an interesting group of people. And I'm glad you had that experience too. It's always a team effort, right? They need you, you need them, and together it makes a really cool team.
Absolutely, it is, and that aligns with so many things that I've heard you speak about as well, like relationships and marriage. It's always just a team effort. But in regards to your book, like I said, I just got it what's today? So about 2 days ago. So I'm a slow reader, so I'm only about like a third of the way through it, but already like so quickly reading it, I was like, this aligns with everything that I'm doing in the podcast. I want to speak with people like yourself, like I was kind of telling you, and I want to showcase all these just amazing people going out there, doing what they want and doing what makes them happy, as opposed to people just getting locked into doing the same thing every day and not being happy. But even more so, teaching other people that they can do the same thing, helping other people. So then in your book, as I start reading this, I'm like, how cool is this? Like, I didn't even know this when we initially booked this, but you're highlighting all these cases from all around the country. And I don't know, I haven't gotten far enough to know if it's around the world yet, but all around the country, no matter how old the people are, how young or girl, boy, like it doesn't matter. And all these things of people going out there and making an impact. And like I said, helping other people. And to me, that was just, it was so fulfilling reading that you went out of your way and all your time and money and effort to write a book about that. You've had a very, very interesting career. Going back as far as I can even, I could dig up, but I know you did things that you didn't initially, as a career, you didn't initially enjoy, but it's insane seeing your progress from years and years ago to what you're doing now. And that's kind of what I wanted to articulate to people. What really got you to drive into the direction to write something like American Spirit, to showcase people helping other people?
Yeah, it was fascinating to me when I was out on the speaking circuit and traveling around the country with my kids, and we'd meet these people who would share their story of pain and what happened with it, who helped them, and who they ended up helping. And it started to be so inspiring and healing for me, not only to see this part of America, aside from what the news is telling us, what this part of America is doing, which is the majority of people, and to see that they're using their freedom for good, for lifting each other up, for sharing, whether it's their faith and that inspires them, or just their abilities, their unique talents, their individuality, which is what we wanted to do in the first place. You know, when our founding fathers came over and started this place, it was to celebrate the unique individual wants and desires of each person and to have the freedom to do that. So when I was hearing all these stories, at some point I realized it would almost be a shame or, you know, selfish for me not to share these stories, because they are important. And if they did that for me in my darkest time, imagine what they would do for everybody else. And I imagine there are people that need these stories.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's one of the things I talk about so much, in that I had an issue dealing with myself before I actually began this podcast, was turning the camera on myself and telling my story and how difficult it's just, you know, it's embarrassing. You get all these weird feelings. I'm sure the first time you spoke publicly, it's a weird feeling being in front of people like that. But I think when we share our story with the intention to help other people, you can quickly or quicker, you know, get over that feeling, because you know you're going to help other people with your story. So you're right, like all of these stories that you've showcased are just people going out there and wanting to do better. And one of the things you said, similarly to their talent. So what were they good at? What could they do, or how could they contribute? And no matter how they could contribute, they went out there and they try to make an impact as best they could that way. And to me, that was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, a lot of them just stepped into it by doing one right thing after another. And I don't think most of them intended to really start a movement or start what ended up being really an amazing impact through a large number of people. They usually just started kind of small, and some of them did hope to make it bigger, but they just started somewhere. And I feel like that's the blessing and the gift in all of this, is start somewhere, do something, fill a gap or a need that's not being met, and see what happens. If you only, you know, reach a couple of people, you never know a couple generations later how that manifests. You know, there's some of those stories in there too, where, you know, Jesse James, he lived with his grandmother in Compton. He didn't live with her, but he spent a lot of his time with her. And she made sandwiches for people that were crossing the railroad tracks looking for work, and left them on her windowsill. Well, when she died, I wonder, does she know the impact she made? Probably not, right? She probably doesn't know that 2 generations later, Jesse James is going to be in Long Beach. People are going to be shoving homeless people out. And he's going to say, no, we're not shoving them out. We're going to take care of them. And donates a building worth over $1 million to Catholic Charities.
Wow.
And, you know, what did that start with? When you ask him, he dials it back to seeing his Nana take care of people just because it was the right thing to do. And it's not like she had a lot of money. You know, she did it because it was the right thing to do.
There's so many good points there. It was the right thing to do. She didn't have a lot of money. You don't need much to start. You don't even know if you unintentionally start something. Like, I'll say, I didn't even intend to start a podcast, but here I am. This is episode 57. I've done one a week, and I'm like, holy crap, like, how does this even happen? I just wanted to talk to people, and I wanted to share this story, and then one thing leads to another. And I think just as long as you make the decision to even start, and you've maybe had good people, like she was setting a good example for him, right? So I think, look in on ourselves, and we can be like, well, what kind of examples are we setting for everybody around us? Like, one of the things, not only do I hope that my guest stories and their experiences help other people, but I hope in me just doing this, going out, not having any journalistic background or not having any public speech kind of background, but me going out and doing something like this, as scary as it can be, as intimidating as it can be, and as much work as it is, it's still possible. So that's me trying to, you know, lead in that sense. And then I've had probably at least 5 people in the last year say, well, I'm going to go out and start a podcast too. And I'm like, that's awesome. Go do your thing. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah. And I think that's true. It does. Your point is good that it takes courage to do things that we haven't done before. And I think it can be overwhelming, but just to start somewhere and listen to where your heart is a little faster, or what things are moving you, and just put your toe in, right? Go a little bit. And I was talking to Martha McCallum on Fox News, I think it was the week before last, and she was saying, isn't it powerful that when you're an adult and you're doing one right thing, you really know what kid is watching and how that will turn out later. A lot of times the things that are so impactful to a kid are something you don't even remember as an adult. You're like, I did that? I mean, there was something my dad said to me. He said, I was asking him about the Bible and following rules, and I said, Dad, I remember you telling me that was really just a recipe for happiness. And that struck me. It was so different than I thought. He goes, I did? I said that? And I'm like, what? That was like, it's a huge thing for me. But yeah, it's kind of crazy when you're just doing the right thing and speaking your heart. You never know who it's going to impact and how it's going to change them.
Yeah, you absolutely don't. And I think the part you said about children is so important, because we say things that we have no idea that they're going to impact. And I was talking to a guest very long ago, and he was saying he was bullied very, very badly as a child. And he encountered these people as they were all adults decades later. They had no idea what they had done, but this in turn, this bullying, all these words they had said, had forced him to go into, now he's like a world champion MMA fighter, and he went into fighting because of that, and he still remembers those words. I mean, I'm talking 30 or 40 years later, and they had no idea, clearly, right? But those things, and I think, and even my wife and I have this discussion a lot. We have a 2-month-old, she'll be 2 months on Friday, and we're like, well, we need to even more so be very cognizant of how we're interacting already, because now, just within a month, she goes from not even looking at you to she's moving around, she's watching what you're doing, how are you speaking to each other, all of these things. So I think all the way from a very early age, this is very, very important to do.
I agree. Yeah, congratulations too. And you're still smiling, so you're getting some sleep maybe?
Yeah, no, there's some sleep there. And it goes back to so many things that I've really enjoyed reading and hearing you speak about. And that's relationships. And I think that's a huge thing with the Chris Kyle Foundation, is that you guys really focus on families and couples and helping them out. Because as we kind of discussed, it's so difficult when you're in the military community, first responder community. But one of the things my wife and I discussed very early on, even before our daughter was born, was that we really, even more so, have to be a team. We have to work together. And it was really bad at first. If you were talking to me a couple of weeks ago, it was really tough. But, we made it work, and here we are today, and we're both getting a lot more sleep as a result, because we're working that much better.
Yeah, no, it is true. I mean, there's always an opportunity through every rough thing that you go through, whether it's children, death, grief, the major life changes, moving, changing careers. A key to success, and it usually involves some really brutal, honest communication and a willingness to do things differently. And I think that's part of what makes American spirit so special, is that these people decided to do something differently. There's Chris Megason, who's in there. He has schools in San Diego. And there's a homeless problem in every state, right?
Absolutely.
And people know that they need to feed people. But Chris does something different, right? He goes in and he actually talks to this guy named Wolfman, who nobody else would talk to. He took the time. He sat down. He didn't give up on getting the story. And Wolfman said, it's great. Somebody's feeding me. It doesn't change anything. I'm never getting out of this situation. And you look at that and you think, yes, that is the problem. When we want to help people, sometimes we're forcing them into this different kind of slavery because they can't get out of it. And sure. Chris did something different. He made sure people live on his campus for 1,000 days, right? So over 2 years, and they are retrained in how to pay their bills, how to build their resume, getting a job, how to get the savings account going. Their children and their entire family line, a whole different trajectory, because he did something different. He didn't just say, I was taking care of homeless people. He said, no, somebody's trying to take care of them, but they're not getting them all the way sure. there. They're just feeding them.
So I know you were talking about not being afraid in those stories, not being afraid to go help people. And I think that's very important. It kind of goes back to the vulnerability that we were discussing about flipping the camera on yourself and sharing your story with intention, but not being afraid to actually go out there and take action. I think that's what separates people. I know, speaking from personal experience, again, it's very difficult to take action. It's very easy to say, I want to help people. I want to do something different, no matter how small or how big it is. but actually going out there and doing something. And that's why I love the book. Like I keep on saying, it keeps on showcasing these things, that it is feasible in any way that you can go and do that. And I wanted
Right.
to, circle back to the foundation, because I think it's so important what you're all doing, supporting families and that community. It's very difficult. And I know some of the reasons why you started that, of course, to continue on legacies. And I mean, I'm sure there's a plethora of reasons that I don't even know about. But you're affecting the world in so many positive ways, and you speak all the time, and you're on TV and all of these things. What can we say to somebody to inspire them to be headed in this direction, between doing it on such a massive scale that you are, and then just somebody that's starting a lemonade stand? How do they, I mean, you kind of touched on before, just start, right?
Yeah, and I think that, I'm probably a good person to ask because I'm intimidated by those things. I really am. I get overwhelmed by the thought that something might not succeed.
Yeah.
And I've been, my journey really has been one of turning fear into faith, and even doing American Spirit. There was a part of me that said, look, from a business perspective, good news doesn't sell, right? People are motivated to listen
Absolutely
to anger,
right.
outrage, accidents, chaos, but are they drawn to the good in life? And I don't know that they are or they aren't, but what I do know is these stories are meant for somebody. And
Absolutely.
I had to have faith that my job is to put it out there.
Yeah.
And then my faith tells me that it's God's job to get it into the right hands, right? I'm going to do my part, but I'm not supposed to worry about the rest. And for me, that was courageous because I do have that part of me that's ambitious and I want to be successful, and I don't want to have something that ends up being mediocre. But the truth is, these stories matter. And I know
Absolutely.
that it doesn't, whether they sell or not, doesn't change the fact that these stories are important. And, we got a call back a little over a week ago that one student who was being bullied, his teacher used this story, and it's in the book of Brian Blackwell, who's a principal, and he was bullied as a kid and turned life around in such a way that now he has blessed thousands of people because of his negative experience. He's a school principal now. And, that kid who felt like ending his life had a totally different take on his experience of being bullied. I know it's not always that simple, but sometimes Sure. It is. And if people will read these stories so that they're prepared to inspire somebody else or take action themselves, that's what this is about. This is an act of hope and faith that there's more of a ripple effect than I'll ever be able to see from this. One of the kids decides to gather cans on Halloween, right? As a parent, it would be really easy to be like, oh, bud, that's going to take a lot of work. Like, can we just go trick or treating, maybe next year or whatever. But instead the parents go, you do? You want to do that? Okay. And they start a movement that turns into a community effort. Absolutely. And starts a new tradition in their town. It's just, that's the kind of thing where I think it's somebody else listening to an idea somebody has for good and saying, okay, why not? Let's just see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Listening, especially as a parent, because I know now more than ever, how overwhelming it can be. And sometimes you're just like, I want to do anything to not do anything. But listening to your children and then doing something and be able to contribute like that, I think it speaks even more to me now to be able to do something. It's quite wondrous. And I think you touched on just do whatever you can do, and it's your job to just do whatever you can do. And I feel like I've had a similar thought, it's sacrificing the gift if I don't do it. I'm not saying I'm gifted, but if I have the ability to do something, I have the ability to help somebody. I honestly looked at my military career like that. It was tough. I had multiple deployments, not seeing my family, but I was like, I have the ability to go do this. I have the skills that they need to do this. They don't hire many people to do this. So I need to do it for the time that I signed up for because I know I'm going to do a good job at it. Now, it's a little bit different. And I paid my time and now I'm here with my family. But I had the ability and now I still want to help people, but in a different way, just as you are in your own unique way, or many unique ways, I should say. And we do what we can, this is I keep on saying, you don't have to have much to start. It's a podcast. You have a mic. You don't even need a guest. You can talk to yourself. And if you have a message and you want to help people, you can get it out there. And it's so easy to start. I think it's easier than we think it is. And a lot of times I think we sell ourselves short. We don't think we're maybe capable of doing it. But I think if you take all these things that we've discussed, taking a risk, not being afraid to try new things, wanting to be a leader, supporting each other, like all these little things that are so big and so important. Actually, if you put them together and then you start taking one step in front of the other, like you can create such amazingly beautiful things that I think you never thought of. It's just amazing how that happens. So I'm so glad there are people like you out there writing those stories and showcasing those other stories. It's got to just it keeps the fire burning.
No, I totally agree. And I feel the same way about you. You know, there's a guy in the book, American Spirit, that Artie Elephant, he has a number of things that happen to him. And it would be very easy to look at him and think, we've got to take care of him. He's got to just, we've got to feel sorry for him. And instead, he's an athlete and he finds a way, right? He rolls up his sleeves and he finds a way to make a difference. And so if he's running a marathon and then he ends up wanting to bike, and now, I don't want to ruin the story, but like at the end, there's in tandem biking in New York in Central Park. And you think, is that important? Yes, it's so important to somebody who lost their sight and who has the desire to feel the wind in their hair and to be active and feel like maybe all isn't lost. That's sometimes enough to inspire them to do so many other things. So there's in tandem biking, or this guy, Brandon Goslin in American Spirit. He's got this, he says in his own words, he went from Mr. High School to Mr. Hopeless overnight. He has this horrible ATV accident. Yeah. He's not supposed to be able to walk again. He's got traumatic brain injury, horrible things. And you would think, okay, he can't learn the same way he did. He can't go to college. No, he can. And he does. And he figures it out. And it's not an easy road. And it's an up and a down road. But at the same time, he finds a way. He ends up doing amazing things. And I look at that and I think, these things are not a life sentence. Your life changed, and it changed in a really horrible, traumatic way, but it's not a life sentence. And he ends up being such a beautiful part of this world because he inspires people and he's a light and he sees and knows strength differently than most people do. So that's such a good point. It turns something meant for bad into something beautiful.
I mean, that's exactly it. I had a discussion again with my wife yesterday. Man, we had somebody close to her that, lost their job, and I reached out to her and I was like, this really sucks. Like, I get it. Like, it's really bad, and, it's going to be okay. There's an opportunity out there. It's going to give way to something better, like you said. It's something, if you have the right mindset when something like that happens, like I specifically told her, it's so easy to be happy and go lucky and smile, and when things are going good. But when those things get tough, like you just described, that you've experienced, that I've experienced, it's really hard to be that person through those experiences. And a lot of times, we're humans. Not at first do I really able to act like I want to act. We have emotions. And then I just keep on pushing those and I try to catch myself in the moment, which you can do, right? Because you can react initially and then you can kind of coach your way through it. Like, this isn't how I want to react. Try to get a hold of yourself and set the example for your spouse or for your friend or for your family, and do the best you can in the moment, and just know that you want to do better. And I guarantee you that you can do better. And I think that goes back to so many things you were saying, like setting examples and doing this. And there's just so many good points to take away from this. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's so much more to the human spirit than people know.
So much more.
And I think, we only see it when we see the difficulties, and then all of a sudden you go, wow, there's depth here that's unimaginable that we wouldn't have without the bad. And my faith, when Chris was killed, I really didn't believe that God, I thought maybe God did design some of the bad, because I thought that, it taught us things. And it's been since then that I've dived into it more deeply. And I don't believe that God designs the bad. I do think there are other forces at work. And I do think that it's more of a chess match, right? So it's like darkness and evil wants to make a move on every piece of light. And I think God's ultimate point of this earth is to say, every time that, in my belief, every time Satan makes a move, I'll turn it into something beautiful. And it's sort of like, try again, and he tries again. And there's nothing that God doesn't use. So, I met Jamie Torres last night, and he just affected me so much. I put some of his stuff on my social media, and was I couldn't put it into words, but one of the things he said is God never wastes our pain. He never wastes our pain. And I was like, that's the perfect way to say it. He doesn't want our pain. He doesn't design our pain, But you know what? He's not gonna waste it, and he's gonna show you how even that he can bring beauty through.
Yeah, it's so incredible how those, as bad as it seems at the time, as dark as it seems, as evil as it seems at the time, those times are a lot of the times what forge our character now in the present. And it never seems like that at the time. It never ever seems like that. You just want to break down and cry and be like, why? Like, why is this happening? Like, I can't even, we all experience different things. It's so tough, but we're better people ultimately because of it. I mean, we wish we could change some things, but things are the way they are now, and we got to make the best of them. We absolutely have to. We have no other choice.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? But see, the thing is, we do have a choice. I remember
okay.
my friends who got, because they would say, well, what, I have no choice but to do it. I'm like, you do have a choice. There are people who will give up. There are people who will be depressed and say, somebody take care of me the rest of my life. There are people who will, try to find a way out of this world or turn to drugs. We have a choice, but you're right in the fact of when you do cry out, why, that's okay. Do it. You're allowed that time to hurt and feel. And I think it's important to do that. The thing is, are you going to get up again?
Sure.
Are you going to try again? Are you going to reach out for help when you need it? Are you going to be brave enough to say this hurts and I'm not doing okay? And I need somebody else to come in and help. Like those things take courage. And when you do that and when you get over that hump, that's where the beauty starts. But you have to be able to keep getting up.
You're so right. You have to get up. You have to. And you do have a choice both ways. You're right. You do have a choice. But I would highly encourage anybody listening, like if you're listening to this if you're listening to this podcast, you know what I'm about. You know who you're about. And I think you're already doing a very good thing. You want to better yourself. I'm recording this because I want to better myself. You're being, a gracious guest on here because, we all want to help each other. I am learning so much from you. I hope I'm, giving you value in some way or another. And then everybody listening, that they're gaining value as well and getting new insight and being like, wow, I am going through a tough time right now. And I just happened to stumble upon this episode and, I knew I had a choice to do bad or to do good, go one way or the other, react one way or the other. But you know what? After hearing this, after hearing, some of what these people have gone through, I'm going to make the decision to go to the light. And that's possible. You can do that. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate of sharing people's stories.
Yeah. And it really, I think about it, I think these are the freedoms that you fought for. It's the freedom of speech. It's the freedom to gather publicly. It's the freedom to talk about our ideas and our faith. That's something that people in other countries don't have. We can't take that for granted. And
so right.
I think, you have a roof over your head and food to eat, then you're better off than so many people in this world. So I know the darkness. I think the darkness, and the idea is the sun comes up tomorrow, right? It always does. And that in itself is kind of a miracle, right? Yeah. That you got through one more night. And I think sometimes when you're at your lowest points, that's all you have to do is just keep literally getting up, and sometimes, figuratively just having enough to take one step. It doesn't have to be a perfect step. It doesn't have to be the best step you ever took, but it has to be a step.
Absolutely not. And saying those things like you mentioned, I know when I wake up, I practice gratitude. I look over at my wife, at my daughter, at my dog, and I'm just like, I'm grateful for you. I look up. I literally do look up and I go, I'm happy for this. I mean, I did a few tours overseas, and I know people have it very tough. And even, before that, you can just travel around the world. You can go to other first world countries and see how drastically different it is, But in the tours, I was in Afghanistan multiple times, and going out doing that stuff is just like, wow, this is completely different. And I came back, and that's a lot of the reason why I started this as well. I mean, there's a lot of pillars that this podcast stands on, but seeing the perspectives of other people, going out and seeing how people are living, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Some of the things that, frankly, we complain about here, and I do really want to shed perspective on that. And I know everything's relative. I get it. There are still issues that are, pertinent to us in our lives. But I do think that if we do some of those things that you've discussed and I've just mentioned here, practice gratitude for actually what we have, I think we'll be happier as a whole, and I think we'll be able to help ourselves and each other a lot more.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Absolutely, Taya. I just can't get over. I'm so humbled for you to be here. It's an absolute honor. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And what is the best place for people to find you if they're not already following you? And I do want to mention, of course, my wife. She first I keep on turning around for those listening, but American Wife, she read it. She loved it. She was so touched by it. I will say at the time I was gone for 6 months when she read it, and it
Wow.
meant so much to her. So she wanted to say, she honestly wanted to say thank you for writing it. She was very touched by it. It meant a lot for her to see it from a woman's perspective, whether you're a first responder, like you all do, or you're in the military, but being gone is very hard. It's a completely different life. And I know there's a lot of civilians that have a tough life as well. I get it. I'm living it now. We have our own difficulties, but I just wanted to say real quick on American Wife, really touched somebody, touched a lot of people. And then American Spirit, I'm so thankful again for you to give me the copy. Thank you. I can't wait to finish it and continue to share those stories. But I know you have Instagram, website, and the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation and all those sites. But please, what's the best way that people can find you?
No, I appreciate that. It's Taya Kyle, American Wife on Facebook and Instagram. Then there's the Chris and Taya Kyle Facebook page too. The ChrisKyleFrogFoundation.org is the place where we do our foundation work. And those are probably the best places to find me and get updates on what's going on. I did also narrate the audio version of American Spirit. So for people like me who like
awesome.
Audiobook,
yeah,
that's another way to get the stories while you're really driving or on the treadmill.
Yeah, no, that's incredible to do that. I mean, on your commute or something, like I love listening to podcasts on the commute. We're going out of town, we're going to do it. And I would highly suggest if you're not into reading, check out that, especially the fact that you recorded it. Like, that's so special. But wow, again, thank you so much. And I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You're doing good things out there.
Thank you so much. See ya.
Okay, bye-bye.
Sometimes I